Hey everyone, so normally on these videos you'll see Nikki or Kate. Well, today it's going to be me. My name is M, or Michael for long, and I am the DP for Transport Evolved, which is a really fancy job title for the skill of just knowing when to hit the record button. I like to think I'm pretty good at it. So if you've been following the channel for at least a small length of time, you might be aware that I've been having some issues with my 2012 Chevrolet Volt. And recently those problems kind of came to a head, to the point where I had to start a fundraiser just to repair it or get out of it, something. So the scope of this video today is basically to discuss what I was able to do with the amazing support I received through that fundraiser, where the Volt is now, and what this is. It is absolutely freezing cold this morning out here, so if you don't mind, I'm probably going to film the rest of this in the car. So yeah, meet me there. All right. Oh, it is cold out there. All right, let's get to it. So by now, some of you, maybe most of you, are already up to speed with all of the issues that I've had with my 2012 Volt. For the uninitiated, I'll give you the too long didn't read version. Basically, I've had a 2012 Chevrolet Volt for the past 2 years. And in those 2 years, it hasn't been the most reliable car. I've had issue after issue after issue. How that car came about was my previous car was totaled in a hit and run. And at that time, I didn't work for Transport Evolved. I worked for a machine shop, and I was on the new hire probational period, which meant you had to show up every day. If you didn't, you were out. So I needed a car pretty quick, and that 2012 Chevrolet Volt was one of the first vehicles to essentially plop into my lap. Now, at this point in the video, if Nikki was even in the same state as I am in right now, I'm in the state of Washington, she would just come bursting into shot with tears streaming down her face, apologizing profusely for recommending the 2012 Volt to me. And I constantly have to remind her that I am a fully grown adult, at least the last time I checked, and I am capable of making my own decisions. And at the time, given the time period that I had, the Chevrolet Volt was an extremely well-respected and well-loved car. Even today, it still gets like a 4.6 out of 5 stars on Kelley Blue Book. Like, it's a good car. And some of the engineering behind it, especially in the transmission, is just, it's bonkers. I can't even understand it. So I think it's actually a good car. I think I was just very unlucky with my particular model. Now, I have a list of all of the things that went wrong with that car. Now, on this list, which I have right here, some of these things were fixed, some of these things were not. But just to give you a greatest hits, transmission module, both front hub assemblies, navigation module, which is like an $800 part just by itself. There were a few misfires, a couple of power-reduced modes every once in a while, usually during hill climbs if I had not used mountain mode. A couple of other issues, airbag service light, the reverse camera went out, just little things that were basically nickel and diming me. The total for all of the work that I had done to the car, not including the work that still needed to be done, was about $3,790. Now, in that same time period, I had spent about $6,000 in monthly payments, including interest. So, you know, the cost to keep it on the road was starting to near what it cost for me to have the vehicle. So it was definitely problematic. Things really started to escalate around January of 2023, so earlier of this year, when the car simply just stopped moving. It wouldn't go into drive, wouldn't go into reverse. It was just a whole mess. Now, at that time, we suspected that thermistor number 1, or a thermistor, was failing. As it so happens, the transmission module failed, as well as the 12-volt battery in the trunk. Now, I'm not entirely sure if they were all connected or if stuff just started to happen all at once, but the transmission module was repaired. We replaced the 12-volt battery, and the car was basically problem-free for several months. Every once in a while, I would get a note on the driver's cluster saying, battery too cold, plug in too warm. So there was still clearly something that was wrong with it, but as soon as that error message would pop up, it would go away. Didn't really think much of it, car still drove, everything still seemed fine. And then, several weeks ago, things started to escalate. The check engine light came on, it would go out, and it started coming on a little bit more frequently until finally it just came on at every startup. And by the time it started doing that, it went into power reduced mode. Now, if you've ever driven a Chevrolet Volt, you'll know that it's not the quickest or most powerful car. If you ask my opinion, I think it's a relatively unsafe vehicle. But in power reduced mode, it was just flat out undrivable. It was just flat out unsafe. There's no way I would have been able to get to work. And my commute is about 80 miles round trip. So the next logical thing to do was to take the Volt to the dealership, have them officially diagnose it, and figure out what was wrong with it. Now keep in mind, at this point, Nikki and I had kind of suspected it was a thermistor. And the thermistor is this tiny, just little cheap little part. But unfortunately, it's not a user replaceable part. And the usual GM certified fix is to replace the battery itself. It's very expensive, definitely not economical, but we were still hoping that maybe the answer would have been an easy one. Well, it wasn't. It was about as bad of a situation as you could get. When I got the call from the dealership, they said that in order to fix failed thermistor number 1, which is in the rearmost portion of that battery pack, they couldn't replace the thermistor. They would have to replace the rearmost portion of that battery. The cost for that, installed, was $6,500. To put it another way, that would have been $6,500 for 5.3 kilowatt hours of battery. That's quite expensive. The off-the-cuff, unofficial quote that I had got for the whole battery was about $20,000, which sounds eerily close to a story that had come out last year where someone had brought in a 2012 Chevrolet Volt with a similar issue, and they quoted $26,000 and some change to replace the entire battery. Now, as bad as that price quote was, it does actually get worse. See, the battery in the Volt is no longer made, which means that they would have either have had to wait for the manufacturer to make a new one or find a third party or find a refurbished battery pack. Either way, the estimated time for arrival would have been about 6 months, upwards of 12. Now keep in mind, I still owe $10,400 on this car. I am making full payments. I am paying for full insurance, full comprehensive, the whole bit, because it's financed, for a car that requires a repair that almost meets what the car is worth. And as of right now, the 2012 Chevrolet Volt in average condition is worth about $7,500 according to Kelley Blue Book. So maybe in not so many words and maybe unofficially, the Volt at this point was totaled. By definition, it was totaled because the repair was about to meet what the car was worth. So at this point, I had zero options because I didn't have the money for the repairs and I couldn't keep paying for a car that I couldn't even use. So at around this time, it was recommended that I start a fundraiser. And I guess I didn't really hold much hope for it, but I still started it just kind of hoping for the best. And some amazing, amazing things happened. And I'll get to that in a second. But as the donations started rolling in and suddenly a repair seemed possible, certain options started to open up. And as I started reaching out to friends and family, other options started coming to the table, and I received an amazing outpouring of support. But some of the options that were on the table was, number one, there was the official fix through GM. Since they weren't going to replace the thermistor and they had to replace the entire battery module, that would have been one option, to spend the $6,500 to have them replace that, and it could have taken 6 to 12 months. I didn't really think of that as a rational, reasonable option, and so I started running down the list of the other ones. The next most reasonable option would be to repair the battery pack ourselves. Now, we have reason to believe that the battery pack in the Volt was actually fine. The cells all seemed to be balanced pretty well. It was just that thermistor. But an interesting aside, when I was discussing to my local dealership about the thermistor problem, I had them look up any open recalls or technical service bulletins on my car. Some of them do address thermistor sensor issues, where what would happen is if there was a malfunctioning sensor, there's a software update that bypasses that sensor and just uses the other sensors to keep tabs on the battery condition. Well, all of those services had been done. Now, I'm not really sure how those recalls and those technical service bulletins and that software update, I'm not exactly sure how they worked, but there was a little thought in the back of my head that said, well, if these had already been done and some of those sensors have already been bypassed, what's to say that this isn't the fourth or fifth sensor that's actually failing? So the health of the Volt's battery was still relatively unknown. It was kind of a Pandora's box of whatever. The other option there was to purchase a used battery pack out of a wrecked or totaled or junked Chevrolet Volt. But again, there's no guarantees that that battery was in good condition. There are a few places that will sell refurbished Volt batteries that you can put in yourself for a little bit more, and they come with a warranty, and that seemed like the best route going forward. The problem with that is, well, I needed someone that knew how to work on the car, because as mechanically inclined as I like to think I am, when it comes to electronics, I am dead in the water. I wouldn't know the first thing. So I needed someone that was well-versed with high voltage batteries. And in this case, I might have called upon the help of Kate Walton Elliott, because I know she has experience with that sort of thing. But also, we needed a lift. We needed a way to raise the car. We needed a few days, maybe a couple of weeks to tear it apart, fix it, put it back in, and keep it going. And the other problem with that is that the car would have been down for weeks. And at this point, I think it's important to note that this is the only car that my partner and I have. We are a one-car household. My partner, due to a disability, does not drive. So having this car in a shop for weeks and weeks on end, if that's what it required, was not really a feasible option. So at this point, this was the most likely outcome, but there was a ton of logistics and a ton of problem solving that had to go into just the mere fact of finding a place and time and energy and resources and people to help work on this Volt. Moving down this list of options, the next one was to do a voluntary repossession. Basically, what that means is you go to the bank, you tell the bank, hey, I can't pay for this car anymore for whatever reason, take it back, I want to get out of the loan. Easier said than done. The bank was willing to do that. They were going to take the keys, take the car, and take it to an auction. But they said that whatever the car didn't sell for, the difference in the price that it didn't sell for, I was still on the hook for. So, in this case, I owed $10,400 on the Volt. If they sold it for $100, I was still on the hook for $10,300. In addition to that, my credit score was going to get dinged, what they guesstimated between 150 and 170 points. The next option, moving down that list, was to call some dealerships and see if a trade-in was possible. And I was very upfront and honest with them. And I said, hey, here's the situation. I owe this much. This is the condition that the car is in. This is what it's going to cost to fix it. Is there any way you can get me out of this loan and into something else? And I got to hand it to the dealerships for not just straight off laughing me off the phone, but every single one of them basically said, hey, there's nothing we can do. You owe still too much on that car. It's too much of a liability for us. We really can't help you out with that. And honestly, I couldn't blame any of them. Another option, moving down that list, is I was given the opportunity to have, free of charge, a Mazda 3 from a family member. The car was paid off. It's an internal combustion engine car, obviously. There was one catch, though. The car had been sitting in a driveway for about 3 years. It ran and it drove perfectly fine when it was parked, but it just has been sitting for just a little bit too long. And the best that I could figure is it would take about $2,000 to get it up to snuff. And that would include a fuel system flush, maybe a fuel pump, definitely an oil change flush. It would need new tires, 12-volt battery, probably a belt since it's been sitting there for so long. The brakes may or may not have been good, but just for peace of mind, it's brakes. I would have probably had those replaced and the fluids flushed out of that. And that was before any computer issues that it may have had or any other electrical issues, maybe rodent damage, that sort of thing. Now, all of these options that started opening up to me, they were all kind of dependent on how much money I was able to raise through my fundraiser and through other exterior sources, me selling off some stuff, etc., etc. Each one of these options had a price point that it had to meet. You know, to repair the Mazda, I figured it was going to be about $2,000. To repair the module in the Volt was probably going to be $4,000 or $5,000. To repair the Volt through GM, it was going to be over $6,500. To pay off the car completely, which was one of the final options, well, that would have taken about $10,000. So again, it really depended on how much money I was able to raise, how much support I was able to be able to take advantage of, and kind of go from there. At this point in the video, I need to offer my deepest, most heartfelt thanks and gratitude and appreciation to every single person that donated and shared my fundraiser. I read every amount. I read every name, including the anonymous ones. I read every comment. I am so humbled and I am so appreciative of you guys, because what I was able to do next was magical. It was just absolutely magical. So I want to thank you guys at this point in this video. Just like I'm still shaking, honestly, just how much support I was able to get. That fundraiser was shared on the corners of the internet that I just didn't expect. I found my fundraiser on a do-it-yourself Volt repair forum on Facebook. A couple of our supporters actually shared it, so thank you. You know who you are. I am so grateful, because what would happen next was incredible. I was able to raise $6,000, a little bit over $6,000, but after the fees and all that, about $6,000. When I went to pick up the Volt, and I paid the diagnostics fee, no repair work had been done. It was still in limp mode. It still had that check engine light on. I was venting and I was complaining to the techs. They couldn't do anything. Their hands were tied. But I was just in a miserable state. But I was like, I want to talk to one of your salespeople. I have $6,000 that I can put down to pay off the loan of the car. I just want to see if anything is possible. I talked to one of their sales guys, and I told them the whole situation. Here's the car. It's on the lot still. You can go and look at it. This is what it has. This is the repairs that it's going to need. Can you get me into something? And that $6,000 that I was able to raise made all the difference, because it literally just showed up on the lot, because I didn't see it on their website a couple of days prior, because I was looking. This Chevrolet Bolt that I'm currently sitting in, a 2019 Chevrolet Bolt LT, had just shown up, and the price was just right. And they said, hey, if you're serious, we could work with you on this. We could probably work something out. And I did the thing that I always do whenever it comes to a big purchase. And to me, a big purchase could be this. A big purchase could be something that's $100. But I walk away, and I was like, hey, I need to discuss this with my colleagues. I need to discuss this with my partner, make sure that this is an option that we want. And honestly, by the end of the night, this was the solution that we wanted to go with. I remember bringing this possibility up with Nikki's wife, Kate, who doesn't pull her punches when it comes to her opinions on things. If I trust anyone to give me the straight, unbiased opinion on anything, it's going to be her. And I told her, I was like, hey, this is a possibility. What do you think? And she was quite favorable to it, but she also came to me and she's like, hey, you need to remove the emotion from this. You need to think about this rationally, think about the numbers, the fuel costs, the insurance, all of that. See if this is something that you're okay living with. And I remember saying, I have no emotion towards this car. And the reason for that is, this is the second car in a row that ideally I didn't want. This is the second car in a row that I've had to purchase because the previous car was beyond repair. It was beyond the repair, a rational, reasonable cost to repair it. My Fiat, the first car that would end up getting totaled, the whole front end was crumpled. It was the frame was literally gone. For the Chevrolet Volt, I had more of a leg to stand on. The car technically still drove. It still stopped. It still turned on. It was still reasonable to think that it could be repaired. But there was no guarantees that had I fixed a portion of that battery or the whole battery, that the car wasn't going to still give me issues down the road. The Volt kind of proved to not be a particularly reliable car, at least that particular one. So to wash my hands of it and to get something that was a bit more reliable, something that I kind of understood a bit more, I thought was a better option. And honestly, I was perfectly willing to go back to ICE. I was perfectly willing to go back to internal combustion engine. And I admit that, and I don't care who knows it. Because EVs, there just aren't any reasonably priced with reasonable range EVs. The Volt was one of those options. This car was maybe the other option. We didn't really consider a Leaf. I didn't really consider the Smart. Those cars just didn't really quite fit our lifestyle. But I have to say that because of the amazing support that I received, not only was I able to stay with an EV, which honestly at this point is kind of my preferred method of travel and commuting. As much as I love manual transmissions and turbochargers and fancy exhaust noises, I'm really, really fortunate that I was able to stay with this. In addition to this, another reason that made this car a particularly smart choice was that there was tax incentives to it. And with the recent battery recall that was done on the Bolts, this has a brand new battery. So it's just under 8 years, 100,000 miles at this point. In addition to that, when I went to sign the paperwork for this car, I had them add on the original manufacturer warranty. So that's, I guess, their equivalent to bumper to bumper. Basically, everything in the car was covered for the first, I think it was 3 years, 36,000 miles. I think that was the original warranty. It's basically been extended until basically the end of the loan, or by the time I reach 91,000 miles. It's at 31,000 miles right now, whichever comes first. In addition to that, I purchased some gap insurance, which normally I wouldn't do, but because of how much money I have wrapped up into this, I felt it was a foolish thing to not have it. This car is fully warranted. If it so much as sneezes, the sneeze, the handkerchief, and the wiping motion are covered. Like, this car is covered from head to toe. So the dealer worked with me. They gave me about $2,000 for the Volt. They accepted the $6,000, and basically all I had to do was roll over $2,000 from the original loan into this car. So it wasn't too bad. 48 hours later, I walked out with this. Now, I can already see the comments. I can already see them. There's going to be a whole slew of people that are going to be like, why did you buy new? You should have repaired what you had. You should fix what you have. It's more efficient. It's cheaper. It's greener. And here's the thing. I absolutely agree with you. My entire professional career has been about building things and fixing things. I enjoy the challenge of fixing and repairing things and giving things a new life. One of my, pipe dreams would be to restore old cars, motorbikes, bicycles. Like, I understand, I think as well as anyone, that repairing what you have and keeping what you have on the road is the more economical solution. However, given the cost that it would have taken to repair the vehicle, given the time that it was off the road, given the fact that my partner and I both need conveyance to our places of employment, I did not see the return on investment go as far with fixing the battery in the Volt as I did taking those assets and putting it into something newer, something with more of a warranty, something that is still relatively being made. The Bolt is still being made, and so support is it hasn't quite fallen out of the window. The other thing worth considering, and this is something I actually owe Nikki for bringing to my attention because I didn't even think about it this way, but if I were to repair the Volt, and at the end of the loan I decided to get something else, the Volt would essentially be 16 years old. Whereas this car, by the time I've reached the end of the loan on this one, would be about 10. Which meant that the ability to use this as a bargaining chip, as a down payment or a trade-in for something else is much higher than it would have been with the Volt. Again, no matter how many times I tried to justify it, maybe if I had had my own shop, maybe if I had my own lift, if I had a second car, then maybe fixing the Volt would have been a better, more economical option. But at the time, the math just wasn't mathing. This solution, this outcome, I'm happy and I am ecstatic and I am grateful and I'm filled, I am overfilling with gratitude. But there's also anger and there's irritation and there's disappointment that a more economical, affordable solution to keep an existing vehicle on the road wasn't economical. There's a part of me that feels like I've probably disappointed a lot of people. I know I feel like I've disappointed myself. Very few things are presented to me that I can't fix or build or find a reasonable solution to that doesn't involve just going out and buying new. I mean, you can ask Nikki how many times I've had to rebuild some of the gear that we've had in the studio to do a purpose, and she's like, no. We'll just get the actual tool for the job. And I'm like, no, I can build this, right? I don't know how an air conditioner works, but if you hand me a broken air conditioner, I can probably fix it, right? I can figure out how to fix it. I didn't know what a cloud mount was. Nikki was like, hey, I need you to build us a cloud mount. No idea what it was. Sure, I'll build it. But a car I cannot put on a bench and work on it a little bit every day and come back to it, work on it, and a couple of weeks later, it's back out the door. I didn't have the luxury of being able to wait terribly long because me not being able to get to my place of employment was beginning to put a strain on the rest of the team. You can ask Nikki. You can ask Nikki how distracted I was during this whole ordeal. And my partner doesn't always have access to public transportation. And here in the US, it's pretty awful. So a working car was paramount to us. And given the money that we had, given where that money was going to go, this was the economical, most reasonable solution with the best return on an investment, essentially. I had to remind myself that it was a very difficult situation to be placed in. I had a full loan on a car that I could not use. The repair was going to meet, maybe at some point exceed what the value of the car was worth, and I still needed a car to get me to work. And no matter how many times I ran the numbers in my head, it just wasn't adding up, and it wasn't making the sense that I was really wanting it to make. I want to say to every single one of you that I appreciate you all. And I thank you guys so much for the gift that you have given my partner and I. For the first time in 2+ years, we are thinking about trips that we would like to take. We're thinking about going to see the beach for the first time in 2 years. Keep in mind, we live about 2.5, maybe 3 hours away from the beach if we take the back route. We haven't seen the coast in 2+ years. We haven't seen the coast since the Fiat. We're less concerned about our mode of transportation getting us to work, and we're able to concentrate on other things in our life, like being able to plan our wedding, or being able to plan our next apartment, or what have you. This is not a decision that I took lightly. This was a necessity. This is something that we desperately needed, and just thank you guys. Seriously. If you guys want to know more about the car, if you guys want to see an update, maybe some mods that we want to do with this car, Funny story on that. My partner doesn't really care for cars a whole lot, but they're already coming up with things that they want to add to the car. You know, we want to put some rubber floor mats in to protect the carpet. I would personally love to have a hitch on the back so we can transport our bicycles around, which that's something that we've never been able to do is transport our bicycles around. We can usually transport like one bicycle at a time. Things are making sense again. Things are looking up, and we're able to just concentrate on moving up in our lives and concentrate on our work, concentrate on just living and not having to worry about whether or not our car is going to get us home. Because for the past 2 years, that's where we've been. So a special thank you to everyone that shared and donated to our fundraiser. A huge appreciation to all of our Patreon supporters that keep us employed and able to make the content that you love. A particular thank you to Nikki's wife, Kate, for letting me borrow her car for a while. Thank you to my amazing team for being incredibly patient and for picking up my slack when I was not able to. This is probably going to be the best Christmas I have ever had. So, thank you. Thanks for joining me today. And if you've got thoughts, make sure you leave them below in our Discord chat room, or you can reach out to us on Mastodon. Thanks to the amazing list of people scrolling by on your screen right now. They are some of the more than 1,500 people who help fund this channel through Patreon and YouTube, covering our bills, paying our team, and making sure we can be 100% independent. If you'd like to join them and see your name listed here, just follow the links below. There's a range of different tiers you can sign up for, from as little as $1 a month, or if you pay yearly, just under $11 a year. A huge welcome to our newest supporters, Nathan Plowman, Hanno, Bender, Estelle, and Sarah J. Goodfriend. If you'd like to support us with a one-off donation, you'll find links below to make Ko-fi and Bitcoin donations. And we even have an old-fashioned P.O. box you can reach us at, address also below. And if you're in need of some swag, you'll find our swag store in the down below as well. We've got some great content coming up, so make sure you're subscribed on PeerTube or YouTube, and we'll see you soon. We make new videos every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. If you want more, the mighty algorithm thinks you'll like this video, but we think this one is also well worth a look. See you soon, and as always, keep evolving.